for us to recap part one, as well as answer any questions that you have about part one and about the specific questions on the quiz. So I'll hand over to you, John, to get us started with this, if you're happy.
Yep, I will. We'll make a start then. So we'll just rattle through the questions in the quiz just to give a bit of a recap of what I went through last time, and make sure that hopefully the people were understanding everything that I went through as far as possible anyway. Question one. This was about which of these is valid or on 6 spells. Well, the thing about rows is that every row must contain every bell once only. So the only one of these that satisfies that criteria is the 2, 4, 1, 6, 3, 5. So then neither of the other two are valid from that point of view. How many rows are there in 9 bells? The way to work out the maximum number on any number of bells is to use the factorial equation. So in this case, 9 times 8 times 7 times 6 times 4 times 3 times 2 times 1 gives you 362,880. So that's the right answer for that question. The next question was about a touch where the row 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1 occurs both at handstroke and backstroke. Is the touch true or false? Well, it doesn't really matter whether the row occurs at handstroke or backstroke. The fact that it occurs twice means that the touch is false, because you can't have repetition of rows at all. So that's false if that row comes in twice. The next one is a slightly more complicated one about an example of wanting to ring a special length of bob doubles. This particular combination of circumstances that I put down here do actually result in the true composition, because every row has been rung 80 of the rows have been rung 11 times and 40 have been rung 10 times. So that's actually satisfies the criteria for a true touch when we're talking about on numbers lower than on 6 bells or less. I think looking at some of the answers that I had that we had for that question, that one caught a few people out. So, but the important thing I say is that just some of the rows, all the rows were rung 10 times, but some of them were rung 11 times. So that's still a valid touch. The next one is about how many of the possible rows on 6 are positive. Well, when we talked about rows being positive or negative last time, we basically said half are positive and half are negative. So that means out of the total 720 on 6 bells, 360 of them are going to be positive. Next one about which row occurs at the second lead end. Lead head's been caused a bit of controversy in recent times, but according to the correct technical use in compositional terms, the second lead end row in Bob minimus is 1432. Reminded that the lead end rows occurs at the treble's hand stroke lead. So the second hand stroke lead of the treble is 1432 in Bob minimus. Working out whether a row is positive or negative. So a reminder that you need to work out how many swaps are required to get back to rounds. So in this case, a couple of swaps are necessary, because you could do swap 1 and 3 and then 5 and 3, for example. So that would be 2 swaps, would get you back to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So therefore that row is positive. Similar sort of rule with these next 3 rows. If you actually go through each of them and work out how many swaps you need to get back to rounds, it's only the third one, 45, 163, that requires an odd number of swaps. So that's the one that's negative. Looking at Bob minor specifically, and how many rows are there in a course of Bob minor starting from row 5, 2, 4, 3, 6? Well, the answer to that one is 60. There's nothing special about the course 1, 5, 2, 4, 3, 6. Basically, every course of Bob minor contains 60 rows. That's just check the understanding that a course contains 5 leads, and each of those leads has 12 rows. So we get 60 rows in a course. Just checking which course heads are in course or out of course. So in course, course heads start from a positive row. So out of the three options here, the only one here that is positive is 1, 3, 4, 2, 5, 6, because that's the only one that can get back to rounds with an even number of swaps. The other two require an odd number of swaps. So the other two are out of course heads. For the lead above minor with that lead head 64235, what will the lead end row be? Well, in the slides that we went through last time, I presented out the complete list of all the courses above minor and all the lead heads and lead ends within each of those courses. So you could check back against that table to see what the corresponding lead end row would be for that lead head, and you would have found that it's 46325 is the right one for that lead head. And using that same table again, you could check the next question, looking for where that lead head, that specific lead head and lead end, and you'll find them in the course 54236. So that's the answer to that one. And in the next one, lead head 53462 and lead end 35642, you'll find that in the course 54326. Again, just by looking at that table. Then I was looking at the transpositions that you have to make from one lead head to the next based on whether you're having a plain lead or a bob or a single. For a plain lead, the transposition is 35264. So when we apply that to the lead head 56423, we end up with 62534. So that would be the next lead head in this case for a plain lead. For a bob lead, the transposition is 23564. So when we apply that to 43562, we end up with 43625. So that's the answer to that one. And a single, the transposition is 32564. So when we apply that to 52346, we end up with 25463. Then just having a quick look at bob major, looking at how many different courses of bob major are there, which start from a row with the treble in position 1, 7 in 7, 8 in position 8. So rounds would be an example of that, the plain course. How many of those are there altogether? Well, the answer is 120. We had a look at last time at how we worked that out, and there are 60 in-course courses and 60 out-of-course courses, so altogether 120. Whoops. Thinking about the transpositions from one course to another that happen when you call a bob at a specific position. The transposition when you call a bob at middle is to move to course 43652. So that's the answer for that one, 43652. And then looking at a combination of calls to see where you get to. So if you called a bob at wrong, then a single at middle, and then a bob at home, as the feedback there shows you, we're moving first to, of course, 52436, then to 62435, and then to 46235. So that's where we end up after that particular sequence of calls. And finally, just looking at where we were composing a 5-part peeler bob major, if our first part end is 64523, to work out what the next course end will be, we apply that same transposition to itself. So 23456 has gone to 64523, so 6 has basically moved into seconds position. So when we do the same transposition from 64523, the 3 is now going to move into second space. So that immediately will tell me from the 3 options we've got here that it must be the bottom one, 35264. So that's what those transpositions are all about. Were there any sort of particular issues that anybody had with any of those answers that you got confused by at all?
I was about to say thank you very much for that, John. And this is a good time for people to ask any questions around that quiz, any of the questions, or anything from part 1. Now would be a good time. Either unmute yourself or dash it into the chat box. Now would be a good time. Thank you, John, for all your work you put into that quiz. I think that the purpose of these quizzes is not really to find out how many you got out of 20, how many you got right or how many you got wrong, but actually it's the feedback that provides you. I think is really valuable. And I think I certainly found going back over the presentation, a second time and really spending some time going through those quiz questions really very, very useful. So thank you, John, for putting that together. I'll just welcome this evening everyone to the St Martin's Guild training session. I'll just briefly run through how this will work. I think it's wonderful to see so many people here and lots of familiar faces and a couple of new faces too, which is great. I think all of you actually know how this tends to work, but in a moment I'll hand over to John properly. If you have any questions that come up, put into the chat box, or you should have the power to unmute yourself, and I will ask the question at the end, or I'll gently interrupt John at an appropriate time to do so. Claire is recording the session, so if hopefully that's fine, but just turn your camera off if you're not happy with that. Otherwise, I think I'll hand over to John, who's going to continue the introduction to composing. I think we've had some really good engagement with this, both with the quiz and people watching the video, after part one, and those of us with stamina have come back for part two. So it's wonderful to see people here. And with that, I will hand over to you, John. Thank you very much for this.
Okay then. So my introduction continues from last time. I will start with just a quick recap of the main points that I covered last time. So the first thing what I started off with was terminology, where we talked about what a row was, what a lead was. So a lead is made up of rows, and a course is made up of leads, and talked about truth. So truth is making sure that there is no repetition of rows within a touch. So we sort of went through and defined those particular terms. We went through talking about the nature of rows, whether they're positive or negative, depending on how many swaps you have to make to get it back to rounds. We went through a process of assigning unique keys to rows of Bob minimus, doubles, and minor. Those keys were based on the nature of the row and the position of the treble and one or more other bells. And the purpose of those keys was to help us identify the different courses that will be required to make up a complete extent of Bob minor. So we got you got your 60 rows in it and a plain course of Bob minor. We used that. Each one's got a unique key, and we went through the process of working out how you then derived all the other rows of Bob minor to get to the full 720. We analysed some touches of Bob minor to see how they were made up of the leads selected from those courses that we'd identified, and we looked at how to check the truth of a touch of Bob minor, and then we looked at a couple of different ways of actually how touches tend to get annotated. Then moved on to Bob major, and again used these unique keys to identify courses which we could then choose from to produce a composition, and we looked at how the calls at wrong before, middle, home moved you from one particular course to another, and we looked at how to check the truth of a touch of Bob major. What most of today's talk is going to be about is now moving on to treble dodging methods. So before we were just talking about methods where the treble is plain hunting, straight from the front to the back and down again. Now we want to look at treble dodging methods. So the treble's dodging in each position: 1, 2, dodge 1, 2, dodge in 3, 4, dodge in 5, 6 on its way up to the back. Same on the way down. So whereas in plain methods, the treble's just striking in one position in each one row in each position on the way up and again on the way down. With treble dodging methods, it's doing 2 in each position on the way up and way down. So this introduces quite a bit more complexity in composing terms. So we're going to start have a look at just at the plain course here of Cambridge surprise minor. So again, we've got all the rows written down here, and against each one the nature of the row, whether it's positive or negative. And the same as with Bob minor, have assigned a key to each row based on the position of the treble, the 5th, the 6th, and the nature of the row. So that's for rounds, that gives us our key of 1, 5, 6 plus, and that same key is applied to every row. As with the plain course of Bob minor, in the plain course of Cambridge minor, all those keys are unique, which is good news. What that means is we can then have a look at those keys and work out what we can do with them to get the remaining 600 rows of Cambridge Minor that we need to make up an extent, because the plain course is just giving us 120. We're going to use these keys to work out how we get the remaining, the additional 600 rows as well. So what we're looking at here in this table is just looking at the keys where the treble is leading in the plain course. So all these keys begin with 1, because that's where the treble is in first place. These are all 20 of those keys that occur in the plain course, and on the next sort of the first round underneath the headings, these are the rows that actually occur for those keys within the plain course. And if you can remember from last time, what I basically said was that each of these keys has got 3 possible values. And in the plain course, we rang one of those possible values. But in each case, the other 2 values for each key can be rung by starting from a different course head. So a different course head that still has the key 156 plus. So we started from 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, plain course, but if we start from 4, 2, 3, 5, 6 and 1, 3, 4, 2, 5, 6, we will get all the other different members of those sets. That's going to enable us to get 360 rows altogether. So 3 lots of the 120. And of course, 360 is only half of what we need, though. So we need to sort of work out which keys are missing. So if you actually just have a quick look along these column headings, so you can see we've got the keys that we've got in the plain course were 123 minus, 123 plus, 124 plus, but we're missing 124 minus, 124 minus, we're missing 125 plus, and we haven't got 126 plus or 126 minus at all. However, what you can see from the table at the bottom is that all the ones that we were missing in the top, we can actually get those by starting from the course head 154326 instead of 123456. So 154326, the key for that is 126 plus. And if we do the same exercise as we did for the plain course, work out all the keys for all the rows in the course starting on 154326, we'll find that they're all different to the ones that we had in the plain course, and it basically fills in all the gaps that we're missing. And again, each one of these keys has got 3 possible values. So as well as ringing course 154326, if we ring courses 153246 and 152436, we'll get the other, between those 3 courses, all the other 360 rows which we were missing from the start. So we've now managed to get all 720 rows in those 6 different courses. What do we then do with that? The maximum number of rows, we've said it is 720. Just a reminder that half of those are positive, half are negative, and basically, hopefully, I've shown you on the previous couple of slides that basically to get all those 720 rows, we can get them by ringing all the courses starting from these 6 different course heads that are shown there. And those 6 different course heads, each have got 5 leads. Each lead's got 24 rows. That's going to give us 720 different rows by using these 6 different courses. So how are we actually going to use them? What we're seeing here now is the table of those 6 different courses. As before, as I mentioned before, I've now dropped the 1 off the front of all of these course heads, lead ends, because they all have a 1 on the front. So we tend to just drop that off because it just wastes space really, and putting that in as well. This table is very similar to the one that I did for Bob Minor before. The only difference is that the lead heads and lead ends, although you get the same lead heads and lead ends in every course as you would in Bob Minor, but they occur the pairings occur differently, and that's because the place bill orders is different in Cambridge Surprise Minor to what it is in Plain Bob Minor. So that means that basically that your lead heads and lead ends will come together in different pairs. What does happen though with Cambridge, just as with Plain Bob, is that any of these leads can be rung backwards. So the example we've got here is the lead that was in red over on the left-hand table that started from lead head 142365 and finishes with lead end 132546. Sorry, 132546. we can turn that on its head and use 1, 3, 2, 5, 4, 6 as our lead head instead. And then 1, 4, 2, 3, 6, 5 becomes our lead end. But we basically rung exactly the same rows, but we just rung them backwards. Now let's look at how that actually we can actually use that information, turn it into a touch. Here I've actually just put some color coding on each of the courses. You can ignore the little arrows for the moment. I'll just come back and explain those in just a second. When we can putting together a touch of Cambridge, the transpositions for plain leads and bob leads are going to be different to what they were for plain bob. As I mentioned before, that's because the place spell order is different in the two methods. The transposition for a plain lead in Cambridge is that the new lead head will be 5, 6, 3, 4, 2, and for a bob, the transposition that will take you to a new lead head of 3, 5, 6, 4, 2. So when we write out a touch like this very common one here on the right hand side, which is the standard wrong home wrong times 3 calling, which is the standard calling that we would use for an extent of Cambridge Surprise Minor. What we got written out here is each of the lead heads, so we can see the transposition and against each one, whether it's just a plain lead or the dash means it's a bob lead. And we can see that whenever there's a bob, that's obviously it means that we've got a transposition that moves us into a different course. So our third lead head here is produced by a bob. There's 2, 3, 5, 6, 4. That particular lead head 2, 3, 5, 6, 4 belongs to the course 5, 2, 4, 3, 6 over here, which is because it's color coded in blue just to make it easy to spot. And going through the whole of the 30 leads of this extent of Cambridge Surprise Minor, basically color coded each lead just to show you where it's come from in the table of lead heads and lead hens on the left hand side. And basically every one of those lead heads and lead hens in the table appears in this touch on the right hand side. So that basically is telling us that we've used all the lead heads and lead hens that are possible to get us to the full 720 rows. So we're going to have a true extent of Cambridge here. It's quite interesting actually on the wrong home wrong calling it's got a slightly strange thing happening. It's actually quite a clever thing really. Just look for example at the blue course. So the course 5, 2, 4, 3, 6. We bring 2 leads from the blown course fairly early on, the ones that start from lead head 2, 3, 5, 6, 4, 6, 4, 3, 5, 2. And if you have a look on the the left-hand table, I've got red arrows against both of those leads, and they're both pointing downwards. But that's basically I'm trying to just to show you that we are ringing those leads in the right order. We're ringing them going forwards. But when we ring the remaining 3 leads of the course 5, 2, 4, 3, 6 later on in the extent, this time the leads are actually all rung backwards. So the lead head 2, 5, 3, 4, 6 appeared in this table as a lead end. So we're actually ringing that lead backwards. And the same for the following 2 leads 4, 6, 5, 3, 2 and 3, 2, 6, 5, 4. So we're still rung all 5 leads within that course, but 2 of them have been rung forwards and 3 of them have been rung backwards. So it's a pretty clever way that the wrong home wrong calling works, that enables you to actually join all the 6 courses together and get you all the rows that you need for an extent. Just wanted to have a quick look at the same as we did with Plain Bob Minor, at how you would work out that a touch was false. So this particular touch over here, again, I've done the same thing with color coding each of the leads according to which course it actually relates to. But when we go through and actually just mark these off to show which ones we've rung, you'll see that 35642, 42563, 63254. These are from the pink course, so these are the ones that that all got this red strike through over here on the table on the left. But when we come back into some more leads from the pink course later on in the touch, the first one, which starts from lead head 45236, is actually the reverse of one that we've already rung. So that's the reverse of 35642 that we've already rung before. So, whoops, that touch is therefore false. So the two leads that are highlighted there with the arrows, they're actually the same leads, once rung forwards and once rung backwards. But by writing out the touch in this way and sort of striking them out from our list of lead heads and lead ends on the left, we can quite quickly see that the touch is false. Just wanted to introduce you to a method that you're very unlikely to have ever heard of before, with a very strange name, but it's actually quite a nice little method. For those of you who are familiar with ringing lots of surprise minor, it's effectively born surprise minor, but with a Westminster front work. So that would just be quite a nice little method to ring. However, if we do our sort of analysis on it of building our keys, the same as we did for Cambridge, we actually find that the keys are not unique. We get repetition of some of the keys. So I've highlighted in pink there just one of the particular repetitions. Now the reason that you won't have ever heard of this method is that repetition of keys causes a bit of a problem, because it effectively means that it's going to be impossible for us to ring an extent of this method because of this duplication of keys. If we actually just look very briefly at all the rows where the treble is in fifth place, so all the ones that start with 5, just looking down the first column, so we've got 541 plus, 532 plus, 561 plus, 562 plus. The important thing to notice is that they were all plus. So at no point have we managed to ring any rows with the treble in fifths that were negative. So there's just no way that we can actually get to them in this particular method. So it causes us a problem, and that's really why we don't ring methods like this. Other than you might want to ring it just as a plain course, which is fine, but you can't really ring it as part of as a peel or a quarter peel. There is a special way in which you could ring it, but that would involve probably ringing a 1440 and having half of that 720 being a method being a touch made up of this method, but then you need to find another method that has basically the reverse qualities. So it needs to have all the rows with the treble in fifths are all negative. So between the two of them, if you rang that 720 of each of them, you would then get all the positive and negative rows with the treble in fifths twice. And because, as we've mentioned before, it's with the touches on 6 bells or less, it's okay for each row to be rung twice within a 1440, and that would still be classified as a true touch. So basically, the only way you can ring this method as part of a peel or a quarter peel is actually to splice it with something else, which is why we tend not to ring methods like this very much, if at all. Now, just move on to looking at the same sort of thing, treble dodging, but now looking at major. We're going to look at Yorkshire surprise major to start with. Again, just as before, gone through exactly the same exercise of generating the key for each row. So the key for rounds will be 178 plus. Doing that for the whole of the course, the whole of the plain course of Yorkshire major. When we do that, however, we find that our keys are not all unique. So a bit like the minor method we were just looking at. You might think, well, then maybe perhaps I could come up with a different key that would be unique. So, for example, perhaps if I added the position of the sixths into my key as well. So my key for the first row would be 1678 plus. If you did that, I think you will probably find that you will get all your keys are unique for a course of Yorkshire Major. However, that basically doesn't give you very many courses to play with. So because that basically only leaves you with rotating 2, 3, 4, and 5, and you will find that if you do that, when you count the number of possible variations of 1678 plus, there are actually only 12. So that would mean you've only got 12 courses to play with, which is nowhere near enough for what you need for a Peal of Yorkshire Major. You need 23. So we're going to have to make do with these keys, the 178 plus keys, and we're going to have to cope with the fact that they're not unique. The two that I've got highlighted in pink here on this example, you'll see there are 2 rows that have both got the key 132 minus. They occur fairly close together in the course. But if we just look at that in a bit more detail, what I'm showing here on this table on the top is these are all the keys which are duplicated in the course of Yorkshire Major. So there are 8 of them altogether. Again, just the one highlighted in pink is the one I was just looking at before, the one that's got the key 132 minus. If we have a look in detail at what the rows are in the plain course for that key. So at row 64, we get 187654332, and at row 67 we get 187563342. Now, what that basically will tell us is that if we start our course, instead of starting from the plain course, the course had 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. If we rang the course starting from 1, 2, 4, 3, 6, 5, 7, 8 instead, which is basically obviously the same course but with 3, 4 swapped and 5, 6 swapped, then at row 64 in that course, we would get the same row as we got at row 67 in the plain course. And likewise, at row 67 in that course, we'll get the same row that we had at row 64 in the plain course. What that's basically telling us is that if our touch is including the course starting from 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, then we can't ring the course starting from 2, 4, 3, 6, 5 as well, because that's going to repeat some of the rows that we've already rung. What we basically call that is a false course head. So we say that Yorkshire Major has a false course head of 24365. So if you ring the course 24365, it's false against the plain course. That same sort of transposition will apply to other courses as well. So 24365 will be false against 23456, but that also means that if we win the course 42356, then again, if we swap the bells that are in 3-4 and the bells that are in 5-6 to give us the course head 43265, that one is going to be false. Those two are going to both occur common rows. Same with these next couple of pairs. So when we say that the method has got 24365 falseness, that doesn't just mean there's one course that's false. It means that every one course has got a corresponding false course, which you will work out by swapping the bells in positions 3-4 and in positions 5-6. If we went through this same exercise for Cambridge, I find they've actually got a lot more duplicates, and in Cambridge we've got 16 duplicate keys in the plain course. But we can go through exactly the same process as we did for Yorkshire and work out what our false course heads are going to be. The one that's highlighted in pink here, we can see that if we ring the course starting from 46253, we're going to get at rows 5 and at rows 1, 3, 5 rows which also occurred in the plain course. And in Cambridge, there are actually 5 different false course heads for the plain course. So in this column, 46253, we've also got 43265, 32546, 24365, and 32465. So there are 5 different course heads which are false against the plain course. So again, in the table on the right, those course heads would also apply to all the other courses as well. So you use the same transpositions that we used to against the plain course to apply those to any other course as well. So, for example, one of the false course heads is 32546. So if we applied that to the course 42356, so that basically the bells in 2, 3, and 4, 5, positions 2, 3, and 4, 5 are swapped, that means that for 42356, we will have a false course head of 24536 as one of its 5 courses. What this basically means that in Cambridge, for every one course that you choose to ring, 5 others are basically knocked out automatically. So what we're saying is, if we're ringing course head 23456, we can't ring any of those other 5 courses. They're all going to be false. But if you remember that the actual total number of courses that we said were available in courses, the total is 60. So every time we ring 1, it's going to knock out 5 others. So you might think, hang on a minute, how are we ever going to be able to get to enough courses to actually ring a peal where we need 23 courses? The way it's done is that you can find a specific set of course heads where a lot of the false course heads are sort of common to each other. So although everyone knocks out 5 others, what you can do is find a set where the ones that are being knocked out are sort of common between the ones that you've chosen. So there are actually 25 for Cambridge. There are 25 courses that you can ring that are all true against each other, even though each one of them has got 5 false course heads. And a chap called Mr. Charles Middleton found a very clever way of actually joining those together to come up with a simple composition for Cambridge. When we talk about false course heads, so where we said in Yorkshire the false course head was 24365, and that for Cambridge we had five false course heads. They were 24365, which you'll see appeared on this table against the letter B. Cambridge also had courses 32546 and 46253, which were against the letter D. And it also had 32465 and 43265, which are letter E. So this particular grouping of false courses is very commonly used to just give you a quick annotation for what the false course heads are for any particular method. So we say Yorkshire has B falseness, and we say Cambridge has B, D, and E falseness. So we can use that to quickly tell us what the false courses are for a method. And if you go to any sort of the typical method websites out there, they will usually tell you what the false course groups are for any particular method. So, for example, Lincolnshire is B and L. Superlative is E, and so you can use that information without actually having to work it out all yourself to know what the false course heads are for any particular method, and therefore use that information to go on and generate a composition. Not all methods have false course heads. So one very common example of that is Bristol. So when you write out a plain course Bristol and you work out all your keys, you find that they're all unique, and therefore there are no false course heads in Bristol. And when we get a method like that, we refer to it as clean proof scale, and that's sometimes you quite often see that abbreviated to CPS. So those methods are methods like that are much easier to compose with, because you don't have to worry about the fact that there are false course heads that you need to cater for. So how do we then use all that information to come up with a composition? So looking at Yorkshire Major, if we're going to produce a composition, then we're choosing courses from the 60 courses, starting from the key 178 plus, and those are all listed in the table up in there, top left. The way I've sort of put this table together is that on the left hand side and on the right hand side, each side on the other side of the table shows you the false course that relates to that particular course. So what I mean by that is where we've got 2, 3, 5, 4, 5, 6 appearing on the left, the false course head for that is 2, 4, 3, 6, 5. Just looking at another one in random, 2, 5, 6, 3, 4 on the left. The false course head for that is 2, 6, 5, 4, 3. So what we basically need to worry about when we're putting together a composition is that if we use course 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, then we must make sure that we don't use course 2, 4, 3, 6, 5 as well. And if we use course 3, 5, 2, 6, 4, then we can't use course 3, 2, 5, 4, 6 as well. We can only use one of each pair. But when we're looking to put together a composition of Yorkshire Major, we need to just go through looking at where the calling positions come, because the place spell order is different to plain bob that we're looking at before. That the calls come in a different order. The before call, which is the one that you call when the tenor was about to become second space spell and it runs out. In Yorkshire, that actually jumps you forward 3 leads. So you end up with a course which is only 4 leads long. And you miss out the calling positions for middle and wrong, which occur at the 3rd and the 4th lead heads of that particular course. The actual effect of the call and the calls and the transpositions they make are exactly the same as they are in plain bob in terms of the wrong before, middle, home, and what course they move you to. So I want to try and use all that information to put together or come up with a Peel of Yorkshire, which I want to try and make a 5-part, a bit like last time we did a 5-part of Bob Major. To get the right length for a 5-part of Yorkshire Major, the minimum number of leads that you need in a Peel of surprise of Yorkshire Major is 157. And if we want to bring a 5-part, then we need to have a number that is divisible by 5. So we're going to choose 160. That's divisible by 5, and it means that each of our parts needs to contain 32 leads. And quite fortunately, with Yorkshire, as I mentioned, if you call a before in one lead, that gives you a short course of 4 leads. So if you add that one short course together with 4 full courses, each of 7 leads, that gives us a total of 32 leads. So if we can come up with a part which has 1 short course and 4 normal length courses, that should give us the right length for a 5-part, which will actually give us a Peel length of 120. So on the right hand side here, I've sort of made a stab at beginning putting together a composition, a 5-part composition of Yorkshire. So in my first course, I've called a Bob before straight away, so I have my short course immediately. The Bob before gives us a transposition of 35264 to the course. But what I've done in this particular example is I've called a Bob at home as well, which then applies this transposition 42356 to 2352664. So we end up with 23564, and then got 2. That's followed by 2 more Bobs at home, taking us to 52364, 35264. Now this sort of technique of adding 3 consecutive calls at the same position, so 3 homes here, is a useful way to increase the length of your touch. And when you call 3 consecutive calls at the same position like this, it brings you back to where you were before, because as you notice, will notice from the transposition for a home is that it takes you to 42356 from 23456. So just rotating 234 around. So when you do that 3 times, you'll get back to where you were originally. So what we've got here so far then is a part which has got 2 full courses and 1 short course, but we still need 2 more full courses to get this up to the full 32 leads that we need for a part. So one easy way of doing that might be to add a set of 3 middles at these positions A or C, or 3 wrongs at positions B or D. But each of those would increase the length of our part by 2 courses and get us up to the length that we need to get to. So we just have a look at whether any of these will work okay. So if we try to call 3 middles at this position A, over on the right hand side, I'm just showing what course each of those calls would take us into. So we're starting from course 23564. The first call at middle would take us to course 53462, and if we check in our table on the left, 536462 is here. That's available. 54326 is not being wrong, so that's okay. That seems okay. That could work. The next middle will take us to course 43265. However, when we look in our table on the left, 43265, we've already rung. That's right, I didn't mention that the ones highlighted in yellow are the ones that are actually the ones that are already there in this composition. So we can't ring 43265 because we've already rung 42356. You see it appears down here, lower down in the composition. So trying to call 3 middles here at this position A doesn't work. Let's try calling 3 wrongs at position B instead. So the first call a wrong would take us to 62534. Again, if we look at that in the table on the left, that's fine, that's available. But 36524, which comes up after the next wrong, no, we can't do that because we've got 35642. We're already ringing that elsewhere in the composition over here. So those 3 middles, those 3 wrongs, they're not going to work for us. And if we do the same exercise and we look at the 3 middles at C and the 3 wrongs at D, we find that those don't work either. They have the same problem. So my starting point here of before and 3 homes, it's not going to work. I need to come up with a different plan. So I've got a different plan on this time. So now this time I'm starting with my first course is just to call it wrong. Then I'm going to have my short course starting with the before, and that's going to then have a home at the end and another home. So again, I've got 2 full courses and 1 short course. I've marked each course that is now been used within this composition. I've marked them off in yellow in the table on the left. But we've now got some different positions at which we might be able to put the 3 middles or put the 3 middles in, or in this case, we also have some 3 homes that we might be able to call to actually give us the 2 extra calls that we need for our part. If we try these 3 middles at position A, so the first new course we would get is 43652. So we check that off in our course on the left-hand side, 43652. That's fine. It hasn't been used, and neither has 46325, so that's okay. The next middle would take us to course 63254. However, when I check my table on the left, I've already got that marked in yellow because I'm actually using it. I've used it further down the composition here. So 3 middles at position A, unfortunately, is not going to work. Let's try 3 homes at position B. So the first home there will give us 45236. Look at my table on the left. Yeah, that's okay. And we're not ringing, haven't rung 42563, so that one's okay. 24536 comes up after the next home. Again, that one's available in the table on the left, and 25463 hasn't been rung. So we've got one that works. These 3 homes give us 2 extra courses to my part, which are not going to be false against any of the other courses that I've already used. So that's how we've basically worked out which courses we can we can at which positions we can or can't add the 3 middles, 3 wrongs, or 3 homes. So what we end up with is the composition looking like this. So now I've got here written the first bob at wrong, followed by the 3 consecutive bobs at home. Then we have the bob before and the 2 bobs at home. That gives us our part. The highlighted in blue on the table on left are the extra courses that we've gone into by calling these 3 bobs at home. Everything is all fine because at no point in this table have we got courses that are appearing both on the left and the right hand side. So at no point is the relevant false course word for any course being wrong. So we can see from the table that should hopefully be fairly clear. The last thing that we need to do with our composition is just double check that we haven't accidentally rung bits of our course twice. So although we've identified that we're using that none of the courses are false against each other, we do still just need to double check that we haven't accidentally rung bits of that course in 2 different places in the same time. So this was an exercise that we did with Bob Major, and it works a very similar way, where we look at each calling position and write down what course you've moved into as a result of making that course, and make sure that you don't get any duplication in any of the columns. And because in Yorkshire, the bob before, as we mentioned before, that jumps you forward 3 leads, so you miss out in the middle and wrong positions. So in this particular course, where we have the bob before, there are no entries in the columns under and wrong because we don't actually ring those leads. But if we go through that exercise of working out all the courses that we've actually moved to as a result of each call, check them all off to check that each column has got no duplications, then our composition is going to be true. Because this is a 5-part calling, and each part has got a different, which means that each part has got a different bell in 6th place, we can get away with only checking the relevant courses for one particular bell in 6th place. So I've just checked all the ones where the 4 is in 6th place, and we can check all of those, and we see that there are no duplications in any of these columns. So that's telling me that this composition is true. And there it is, just written in its sort of shortened format, as you would typically see it written down in a composition book. Very briefly, just talk then about Rutland. Might be a method that we don't really like ringing, but it has quite an interesting little feature. When we look at the duplicate keys in a plain course of Rutland, we find there's only 4 compared to the 8 that we had in Yorkshire. What I've done this time, though, is also look at which particular lead these duplicated keys occur in. Look again at the 132 minus, for example. The 2 rows which have the key 132 minus, one of them occurs in lead 3 and the other one occurs in lead 4. So what we can say now is that we talk about the actual incidence of the falseness, and we can say that false course head 24365 occurs in Rutland, but it's between leads 3 and 4. So it's those 2 leads that are actually false against each other. And then this other set of duplicate keys at the bottom of the table, the blue ones, these have an incidence between leads 4 and 5. So the summary, we can say as a summary for Rutland that its incidence of falseness, it has 24365, the same falseness as Yorkshire, which we said was group B. But in both cases, both of these incidences of the falseness, they both involve lead 4. So one clever thing that we can do with Rutland and methods and other methods like Rutland that have the same place bell order as Rutland is if you call a bob before at the end of the 3rd lead, that basically jumps you forward from the 3rd lead to the 5th lead. So you've actually missed out lead 4 altogether. That basically means that you're avoiding the falseness. So any falseness that you might have had you don't need to worry about, because you haven't actually rung lead 4 of that course. You might, one thing that you could do therefore with Rutland is come up with a composition that has a bob before in every course, and then you wouldn't have to worry about the false course heads at all, because you never ring lead 4, and the incidence of the falseness always involves lead 4, then you just don't need to worry about it. So just looking at this example touch at the bottom here, just a shortish touch, a 1600, but this is a true touch, but you can see that it includes both courses 53624 and 56342, which would normally be false against each other. Similarly, it includes course 24365 and 23456. They would normally be false against each other, but in both cases, because we never ring lead 4, we can get away with ringing both of them. We could have actually used a similar technique to that with our attempt at coming up with the Peel of Yorkshire as well, because if we do the same with our 8 duplicate keys in Yorkshire and actually write down the lead number where the falseness is occurring, and we look at the specific incidence of falseness in Yorkshire, we can see that it's between leads 1 and 7, 2 and 3, 5 and 6. But you notice that again, lead 4 doesn't appear in that instance of falseness at all. So that means that you can ring a composition which does have apparent falseness between 2 different courses that you're ringing, but because one of them you only ring lead 4, you don't have to worry. So what I mean by that is that in this composition on the right hand side, in the 3rd course, this bob at middle here will move us from 53462 to 43265, the one that's highlighted in blue here. But also later in the composition, we are ringing 42356 as well. However, because when we call this middle to go into 43265, we're immediately calling a wrong at the very next lead end. So we're effectively only ringing that one lead of the course 43265, which is lead 4 of the course, before we then move on to something else, then we move to a different course. The fact that we've also rung course 42356 doesn't matter, because there is no instance of falseness in lead 4. The same would apply to the lead in the 4th course of the part here. So we get another middle followed by a wrong. So the lead that's in between here as well. There's also one which you would think was going to be false against another course, but you get away with it because you only ring that one lead. This incidence of falseness, it is pretty important when you start composing in trouble dodging major methods. It's not in many cases you can get away with just knowing what the false course heads, the overall false course heads are, but more often than not you need to look at the incidence as well, to be able to sort of in some cases get a sufficient length, because without it you may not be able to get a sufficient length for appeal. The last little bit that I want to cover is music, because this is something that I mentioned right at the very beginning of the original session as being something that the composer should be aiming for where possible. The different types of music that you will typically see, one that is a bit old-fashioned nowadays, but you will still see it. You'll see it mentioned quite a lot if you look at compositions in books, etc. The combination roll-ups on 8 bells, those would be the rows where all the rows where the 7th is in 7ths and the 8 is in 8ths, and the bells in 5th and 6th are any of bells 4, 5 and 6. So that means all the rows that end in 5, 6, 7, 8, 6, 5, 7, 8, 6, 4, 7, 8, 4, 6, 7, 8, 4, 5, 7, 8, 5, 4, 7, 8. At some point, somebody in the past decided that those were good rows to have in appeal, There are 24 of each of those, so you can get a maximum of 144 combination roll-ups in a peel, and you will see a lot of older style compositions that aim to get that maximum number of combination roll-ups. However, it's a little bit, it's not really in fashion anymore, so you tend not to see it quite so much nowadays. Other things that you might see more nowadays are looking at combinations of 5, 6, 7, and 8. So that would be rows ending, for example, in 5, 6, 7, 8, 7, 5, 6, 8, which is the Tittum's position, or 8, 7, 6, 5, which is obviously backward, bringing the sequence backwards. So sometimes you'll see compositions that do aim for all those as many combinations as possible of 5, 6, 7, 8, because they are quite pretty. Much more common nowadays is cyclic music. So this is where we're trying to use a combination of rows and courses, which will produce runs going forwards and backwards at the start and the end of the row. So if you use the course heads listed here on 8 bells, what these do is that if in your course, if in your part that starts from, in your course that starts from rounds 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, if you've got where you got all your rows in that course that ended with 5, 6, 7, 8, then when you bring that same course or that same sequence of changes, methods, say starting from 1, 6, 7, 8, 2, 3, 4, 5, for example, everywhere where you got 5, 6, 7, 8 in the original, starting from the plain course, you're going to get 2, 3, 4, 5s starting from this course end, and starting from the next course end, 1, 7, 8, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, you're going to get 3, 4, 5, 6s at the back of the row, and then the final one, 4, 5, 6, 7s at the back of the row. So by using these cyclic part ends, you can get a lot of repeated music from one part to the next, and it is something which is quite commonly used nowadays, and it's much more the modern way of recognizing music than the combination roll-ups would have been. The other thing that we do lots of nowadays is looking at little bell music, and by that I mean mostly runs of 2, 3, 4, 5 or 3, 4, 5, 6 typically. If you look at a plain course rows on the left, this particular combination across the lead end to the next lead head, you'll see that at the back of the change we've got 5, 4, 3, 2 at the lead end, followed by 4, 5, 2, 3 at the lead head. And so that means in the plain course you're getting these nice runs, 5, 4, 3, 2s. But if we run the same course but starting from these other course heads, this set of 8 course heads here, then at either the handstroke or the backstroke row we'll always be getting a run. It might be a 5, 4, 3, 2, it might be a 2, 3, 4, 5, it might be a 3, 4, 5, 6, it might be a 6, 5, 4, 3. So if it's good if in our competition, if we can try and ring as many of these course heads as possible, then we're going to get little bell music in our composition. This other lead head, the one with the 7 on the front, where you've got 3, 6, 2, 4 followed by 6, 3, 4, 2 at the back of the change, those will also give you little bell runs, not in the plain course, but in these 8 other courses. Again, these will give you runs of either 2, 3, 4, 5, 5, 4, 3, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, or 6, 5, 4, 3. So again, in your composition, you'd ideally like to be able to include as many of those as possible. However, do notice that if your method has got B falseness, like we said Yorkshire did, then you can't have both. So in here we've got 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 and 2, 4, 3, 6, 5. So we won't be able to ring both of those and get little bell music from both of them. There's also another place in the course, this final lead end, where we have 7, 2, 5, 3 and 2, 7, 3, 5. If you ring the course starting from 64352, then at this hand stroke row you'll get 7654s. So that's another way of getting some runs, in this case 7654s. And just as an example, on the right hand side here, I've just picked this method only for the reason that it doesn't have any false course heads. So it's one of these clean proof scale CPS methods. So there's no false, it doesn't have any false course heads. Therefore, in my composition here, I've managed to get every single one of these courses just to try and pack in as much little bell music as I can. So that's something you might want to be aiming for when you're producing a composition. So just to summarize what we've gone through today, hopefully you'll have seen that trouble dodging methods, they obviously introduce quite a bit of additional complexity. Most trouble dodging methods don't have any falseness between courses. I showed you one that did, but we tend not to ring those. On the opposite to that, most trouble dodging methods do have falseness between courses, although there are obviously some that don't, but most do. But you can often take advantage of the incidence of the falseness, so you can still manage to produce a reasonable composition. We looked at a few of the different varieties of music that you might want to aim for. One thing I haven't covered at all today is calling singles in trouble dodging methods. We've just talked about bobs and staying and keeping with in-course course heads. So you can in a lot of methods use singles as well, but they will usually give you a lot more false course heads that you've got to worry about. So they can make things a bit more difficult. So certainly if you want to have a go at coming up with something initially, you're best to stick with bobs only to keep it fairly simple to start with. But to work out those false course heads, you would go through a very similar exercise to what we did, writing out a course starting from a negative row rather than a positive row that we did, and basically comparing all our keys against the keys for the playing course, and you'll find that there's quite a lot of extra duplication that you'll find and that you need to worry about. You can also use similar techniques to ones I've talked about to work out false course heads for split tenors courses. So these are the ones where we had bobs that actually affect what 7 and 8 are doing rather than leaving them unaffected. So that those course heads will generate. You have to play with a whole additional set of false course heads if you start playing around with split tenors. But you can also again use the same techniques to work out inter-method falseness if you want to do compositions of splice. So if you want to come up with look at doing a splice composition of Cambridge and Yorkshire, for example, you would look at all the keys for Yorkshire and all the keys for Cambridge and do a comparison and see where they overlap. And you could come up effectively with a table like this one at the bottom here, which gives you all the inter-method falseness between Cambridge and Yorkshire. So this is telling me, for example, that this C1 versus Y1, what this means is that the first lead of the playing course of Cambridge will be false against the first lead of course 43652 of Yorkshire. So if we've rung the first lead of the playing course at Cambridge, we also ring course 43652 in our composition, we can't ring Yorkshire for that lead because it will be false. Somebody looking at just at the very last entry in this table. So if we ring the 7th lead of the playing course of Cambridge, we cannot ring the 7th lead of the course 35426 of Yorkshire because they'll both contain the same rows. Just wanted to, at the end of this session, just repeat what I said at the end of the last session about what do you actually need to do if you want to get started on composing yourself. So do start with touches above minor, do then experiment with some other playing minor methods like St. Clement, so you're playing around with different lead end orders. Then have a look at Bob Major, but keep things simple. And again, as I mentioned last time, and I would couldn't reiterate this more strongly. Study other people's compositions and work out what other people have done and why they've done what they've done, because that you'll learn an awful lot from doing that. Last time I mentioned the Wilfred Wilson's change ringing book as a useful resource for composing. Since last time, I've just come across this other one as well, which is this one called A Handbook of Composition by John Leary. This is actually available as a PDF download from the Central Council website if you want to have a look at that one. It's a bit more, goes into things a bit more detailed, if you want to pursue that at all. That's the end of my session today.
John, thank you ever so much. I think both this time and the previous session, you've helped to demystify composition. I think the more I've heard, the more my admiration for composers has just gone up. Not that I ever thought it was easy, I hasten to add, but I think you begin to unpick the thought process that needs to go behind it so much more. So thank you so much for both sessions and for the quiz you put together. The chat box has been very, very quiet. So this is a good opportunity for people to ask questions, either type into the chat box or unmute yourself. You should have the power to do that and ask John your question. John, I had a question to start us off. Maybe it's a simple question, so I apologise if it's too simple, but presumably there are some methods, perhaps some major methods, that are easier to compose with than others, perhaps because of those false courses. Like, is Yorkshire and Bristol easier than Cambridge, for example?
Yes. So Bristol will be the easiest because it has no false course heads. So yes. Really, the more false course heads you have, the more difficult it makes it. So, in that particular ranking, Yorkshire would come next because it only has one false course head that you need to worry about. So each one course knocks out one other. Cambridge is much harder because of the fact that every one course you ring knocks out 5 others that it means you can't ring. So there are with Cambridge there's literally really only one composition of Cambridge that manages to use all the 25 courses. Because there are only 25 courses that are available, unless you start playing around with singles. And if you play around with singles, you can get more courses. The nature of the method does make it a much harder thing to try and compose a peel of. So it will generally depend on how many false courses a method does have. The other methods have sort of funny combinations of false courses. I mentioned in passing Lincolnshire because that has the B false course head like Yorkshire, but it also has a group L, which is another group of 3 courses. And again, that makes Lincolnshire quite tricky to compose. There are still a set of, I think there's still a set of 30 courses that you can find that are true against each other, but it does make it much more tricky. So as a starting point, you might be better off to try and go with a method that doesn't have any false course heads like Bristol. But Bristol does have some other challenges because of those. I mean, those of you who are familiar with ringing Bristol, the fact that the bobs, you have this repeating lead feature with the bobs, so you go back and ring the same lead as you did before. It means you have to be very careful when you're checking the truth that you haven't accidentally repeated a lead that you've rung somewhere else. But using the same techniques that I've described, you can still manage to do that. It's just a bit harder, a bit more detailed.
Super. Thank you. There's a question in the chat box from Julie. Julie asks, from last week on Plain Bob Major with a shortcut to checking the truth, I wasn't quite clear when you said you checked the transpositions in each column, i.e. wrong, middle and home, to see if they were all different, whether you meant you just checked the transpositions within each individual column, within all the columns as a whole.
Right, yes. No, it's just the transpositions within each individual column. Because what you're checking, the purpose of that particular exercise is just checking that you haven't accidentally rung the same bit of a course in 2 different places within the composition. So you'll probably within your composition probably ring the whole course, the whole of the plain course, for example. So in your checker, you'll have your column headings for wrong, before, middle, home, and you'll have the course 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 appearing in each of those columns. So it's only when you get repetition within a column that's when it's false. But repetition across columns is perfectly, that's the norm.
Super. Thank you, Julie. I don't know if you want to follow up on anything, or if that's okay. Super. A couple of people have unmuted themselves. I don't know if that means they have any questions. Steph, is that you just unmute yourself, or is that something you want to ask?
I'll ask mine in private.
I was about to say, you could just follow from the other room, couldn't you? Super. And Susan, you've unmuted yourself. Did you have anything?
No.
No. John, you've got lots of thanks coming in. Yeah, Julie's saying, and I think I'm definitely on this wavelength as well. Spend many hours replaying the presentation to understand it. It's new and a lot to take in. It's wonderful to understand the logic behind it all. You've got some other thanks from people who, some who are still here and some who have had to dash off. I had one other question, actually, again, perhaps not so much on your presentations, but more personal one. John, obviously you're somebody who's interested very much in multi-minor, spliced minor methods. I wonder what it was about minor that interested you so much.
It's a good question, because I was sort of very much a sort of multi-purpose man originally, and well, because I've basically done everything on from doubles to 16 really, but I'm not quite sure that I think minor just sort of particularly got my interest. Well, it's quite a few years ago now, when just a group of people that we were ringing with were looking to ring lots of trouble dodging minor, and it was at the stage we were doing it, it basically wasn't possible to ring sort of groups of minor methods within a normal pill length. A lot of these things hadn't been done before, and so I just got interested in trying to work out different ways of being able to do that. So I think it was yeah, a bit of a sort of bit of an accident really, that we were just involved with a group of people who were ringing quite a lot of minor, and just looking at new things to do, and that's sort of where I really started off with it, and it just sort of took off really. In particular with multi-minor, there were some new techniques that were identified originally by Philip Saddleton. I think it was actually in the 1990s, that sort of were a fairly major breakthrough, certainly in terms of bringing splice surprise minor. But then I sort of had to take that on quite a bit further to look at other groups of trouble dodging minor as well, to be able to ring those. So it sort of has developed quite a bit over the years, but there's still more to do though. But it's all at the moment, it's all in the too difficult box, until I think of ways of making it not too difficult.
I'm sure that's part of the attraction as well, isn't it?
Yes, you're probably right. Yes.
Thank you for that. I think if people are happy to sort of I think if we end the unless anyone has any other burning questions, I don't know, Claire, if you want to end the recording. I know I'm sure if people want to stay around for a couple of minutes,